Well, hello everyone, and welcome to this special AMBA and BGA webinar in association with Barco, during which we'll be delighted to discuss the findings of our recent survey into education technology and discuss what some of the findings and results mean for business education as we move forward into the next phase of what we're calling the new normal. So I'm just going to share my screen so as you can see my presentation. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is David Woods-Hale. I'm Director of Marketing and Communications at AMBA and BGA, and I'm also responsible for running the Research and Insight department here. So it'll be myself, I'm afraid, that will be sharing most of the results with you over the next 40 minutes or so, and then moving into a conversation about what some of the findings mean. But I'm delighted to be joined today by Simone Hammer, who is Global Head of Marketing and Barco Learning Experience at our associate partner, Barco. Thank you very much for joining us today, Simone.
Thank you, David, and it's a real pleasure actually to be here with you today. So it'll be very insightful. So we have seen actually the results, and having you, David, walk us through today through the results will be a real pleasure and very, very helpful, hopefully for you as well who are listening in. So my name is Simone, heading marketing for a platform called WeConnect, and maybe we can just have a look at what it looks like. Yes, this is what WeConnect is. It's a virtual classroom platform. Here you can see the virtual classroom literally, so there you only have remote people. We also have virtual hybrid setups. We will talk a little bit about that, right, David, through the survey also. I mean, what does hybrid mean, and how you foresee hybrid in the future. And with that, I don't want to talk too much about us and our platform, and hand it over back to you, David. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So basically for the next sort of 40 minutes or so, I'll give you a very whistle-stop tour through our research, and we'll talk a lot about what some of the findings threw up. And then hopefully at the end, we'll have some time for discussion where we can talk about how we can really take the findings and use them strategically as we move forward. It's also, unfortunately, not a situation where you can sit comfortably, because there will be a little bit of audience participation. And at various times throughout the presentation, we might ask you if you agree with the findings, which I think would add a little bit of color and interest to the presentation. So there's a couple of polls that will be running through the course of today's discussion. But just to give you a little bit of background into the research. So we published the second iteration of our education technology research about a month ago. And that follows a big piece of research we launched in a very similar sort of strand in January this year. So I think before I really talk about the most recent research, it will be useful for background to share a little bit about what we found out at the start of this year. So we surveyed business schools within the AMBA network towards the end of 2020. Now, as we all know, 2020 was a year of extreme change and uncertainty, mostly due to the COVID-19 pandemic, which led business schools to have to take a lot of their courses online. And when Simone and I were analysing the findings, we were very keen to sort of look about the change in strategy from reaction to innovation through to, keeping a lot of these I suppose, process and ways of doing things in place as we become a little bit more strategic in moving forward. In January 2021, the overarching takeaway that we took from the findings was that business schools were very pragmatic in realizing that things would never be the same. And we used the term that it was like crossing a Rubicon, that lots of technology that schools have been experimenting with or thinking about had now come to the fore. And, COVID had encouraged, I suppose, in many ways, business schools to put these really exciting technologies in place. But we were still uncertain at the start of the year how this was going to sort of pan out in the longer term. So at the time, as I mentioned, the business school leaders who took part in that piece of research were sort of saying, well, we're pragmatic, we're really excited to see how we can run with this and take it forward. We talked about how people were initially reactive. So a situation had arisen where they had to think about, virtual classrooms or remote study. But then as 2020 rolled into 2021, people were thinking, right, okay, well, these challenges have been addressed. So how can we use this a little bit more strategically? So it was more about sort of adaptation to adoption and moving into this second phase. But I think what was fair to say at the start of the year was that, people that we'd interviewed, as well as commentators and experts in the EdTech arena, were sort of saying that, business schools were going to have to continue to adapt and adopt as we move into this new phase of innovation, which I've discussed. So it was about moving from crisis mode, or that reactive stage, into an innovative and creative stage. As obviously vaccines started to be rolled out at the start of 2021, there looked like there was a bit of light at the end of the tunnel in terms of the COVID situation. And it was about thinking about how we could best use the technology that we'd already put in place to really come up with something much more exciting, immersive and engaging for students, whether in person or attending courses virtually. So the next piece of research we launched was, as I mentioned, in October this year, and we surveyed business school leaders over the summer. So essentially what we wanted to look at was 9 months on into 2021, what had changed. So just to give you some background into the methodology of the research, as I mentioned, we carried out the survey between the 31st of May and the 19th of July 2021. We circulated an online questionnaire to our business school network and decision makers who had influence over investment and strategy in terms of education technology and online learning at business schools across the network. And a total of 171 business school decision makers took part in the survey. And if any of them are on the line, thank you very much for your time, because it makes a real difference in us putting together the findings of the report. So just to give you a little bit of background into demographics, geographically speaking, it was a very global split. So about 42% of those that took part in the research were based in business schools in Europe, but not the UK. 18% in Latin America, 9% in Africa, 9% in Asia and the Middle East, excluding China and India, 8% in China, including Hong Kong, 7% in the UK, and 6% in North America, and 1% in India. Fortunately, there were no business schools that took part in this research based in the Oceania region. In terms of decision-making roles within the schools, about 53% classify themselves as deans or directors of business schools, 12% worked in designing and delivering management programs, 7% were academics, 5% work in other roles within business schools, such as careers, alumni, marketing, recruitment, 2% were in technology roles in a learning capacity, and 21% worked within another role in the business school. 92% of those that took part in the research work for business schools that provide MBA programs. And you can see here, we've asked, what sort of other programs the schools offer. So you can see that there was a high proportion of respondents that provide masters, custom education, open enrollment programs, bachelor's, doctorates, MSc programs, and MOOCs. And just in terms of the size of the student bodies, we asked respondents how many students are currently enrolled at their business schools. It obviously ranged, but the mean figure was 2,925. So the first section of the research was designed to explore the format of teaching, and really asking how technology was really sort of emerging or being used within a teaching format. So you can see here that 75% of respondents, when surveyed between May and July in 2021, were saying that they used virtual classrooms. Now that's a 24% increase from the 51% who said that they used virtual classrooms when surveyed in 2020. So I found this finding particularly interesting, because we can see that, even in 2021, as it's sort of looking at people moving back into physical classrooms as lockdowns were ending, there's still investment and development taking place in the technology that enables virtual learning to take place. 25% of responding business school leaders said that they were already using virtual reality to teach programs, and 61% of participants were unsure whether or not their school was using virtual reality. 61% said they were not using this technology, while 14% were unsure. And 65% of participants are indicating that they're using virtual reality in particular to teach in a more exciting way. Now, I'm quite interested in virtual reality. I think it's the sort of thing that, again, this is an example of what people had talked about quite a lot before the pandemic, that this was something that they were thinking of using. And, you know, the circumstances have dictated that the time has come to use a lot more innovative and interesting, I suppose, ways of delivering curriculum. So we asked them what ways they were using virtual reality. And you can see that, you know, it's all about teaching in a more exciting or immersive way, modernizing the teaching. 50% of respondents are saying that it's enabling them to be more productive. 46% are saying they're offering differentiated learning experiences, like offering lots of different ways of learning. And I'll come back to that a little bit later in the survey, but you can see here, these are the sort of motives that business schools are considering in terms of the investment that they place in technology. And a lot of it is around just being more exciting, more innovative, more modern in terms of what they're doing. So to accompany the quantitative research, we also held a focus group where we invited deans from a number of business schools, mostly across Europe, to talk about what the findings really meant to them at a sort of grassroots level in their own schools and in their own strategies. And you can see here, Celine from AMBA Business School was really quite, I felt really forthcoming in her thoughts on how technology is making a difference within their school. And Neoma has really invested in developing a virtual campus where students are sort of joining as avatars in a virtual learning environment that encompasses both lecture theatres and also numbers of meeting rooms and offices, a library. And they sort of consider it as the fourth physical campus, but in a virtual environment. And you can see here by sort of reading some of Celine's comments that what I thought was particularly interesting was that she's saying, you know, we're not just thinking about teaching and learning here, we're thinking about people moving into the workplace, and it's going to be a digital workplace. So we want to be able to enable that transition between what students are experiencing at business schools during their MBA and also what they'll be experiencing in work. And I think that comes across quite clearly in a lot of the findings that, you know, it's not just about, oh, emergency situation here, we have to be able to provide technology to teach our students. There's an opportunity to create lots of pathways into new ways of working, because this is the workplace that we're all living within at the moment. So then looking at synchronous versus asynchronous learning in business schools. The findings show that the biggest advantage of both synchronous and asynchronous digital platforms, such as virtual classrooms, for example, is that there's less travel for students. And I think that's quite an obvious situation. And, you know, there's the case of you know, lockdowns and social distancing, but also given the climate agenda, there is a lot more sort of, I suppose, potential for business schools to be thinking innovatively about how they engage with students. And virtual classrooms and teaching methods for both synchronous and asynchronous learning really enables that. And I think business schools are really seeing that come to the fore. 54% of respondents expressed a belief that asynchronous digital teaching methods offer a worse experience for learners than classroom teaching. But I think that's to do with networking and collaboration. I'll come back to that shortly, because there's a lot of innovations that they've put in place to try and circumvent this problem as well. So we asked, you know, how do asynchronous and synchronous digital methods compare to the traditional classroom teaching experience? And I think, you know, the jury's really split on this. And I think, you know, it's different strokes for different folks. What I find really interesting is that, you know, while there are, in terms of asynchronous, you know, they do require that collaboration. There is an issue with, you know, it could be perceived to be worse. Most people are saying that they think, you know, this sort of digital environment is providing an experience that is the same, somewhat better, or much better than what is previously there. And I think it's about what the respondents are really saying here is that there needs to be various options, different ways of offering teaching and learning experiences to offer the most flexible and immersive experiences to cohorts. We asked about challenges. So what business skills were finding particularly challenging in a sort of more digital and virtual environment. And, you know, I think that what's coming across here is that business skills are saying that it could be they're not sure about where the gaps in student knowledge is, so that it's not a case of walking up to a student and sort of saying to them, is everything clear? Do you understand what's going on? And it's interesting. So in terms of the findings, 69% of those that took part in the research are saying that this has been the sort of biggest problem that they're experiencing. 64% are also ascertaining lack of student engagement or connection issues, so problems with broadband or online. We have a poll on this, so I'm just going to ask my colleague, would you be able to launch the poll on challenges, please, just so as we can find out if the people taking part agree. So basically, we're just asking what are the challenges when using asynchronous and synchronous digital teaching methods. So they are identifying gaps in student knowledge, gaining feedback from students on their understanding, transforming courses to fit an online format, providing feedback on student work, or making materials accessible to students.
Yes, David, so we've got the poll open. So we'll give it a few moments for everyone to obviously respond to this question. And obviously, in a moment, I'll be able to hand you the results. Okay, the results are, so we've had 50% say identifying gaps in student knowledge, 58% say gaining feedback from student on their understanding, 42% say transforming courses to fit an online format, 21% say providing feedback on student work, and 13% say making materials accessible to students.
Thank you very much. So then we, again, in one of our focus groups, we spoke to Antonio from ESEG Business School. And he was basically, again, very forthcoming in his thoughts on how digital transformation was impacting his own business school. And I think he responds really well to the discussion that I've just had with you all around the challenges, because he's saying, you know, it's not about building a substitute to a classroom experience. It's not about comparing apples to oranges when you use a virtual environment. It's about replicating a connection and using different modes of learning to be able to come up with exciting new ways of networking in an online environment. And I think that really hits the nail on the head, that you could never directly compare a classroom-based experience to a virtual hybrid experience. They're different. It's about offering as many options and as many different innovations to make these environments as engaging as possible, whatever the medium. What's really good news, however, is that 93% of respondents have said that faculty are either very satisfied or fairly satisfied with the current digital teaching technologies they've put in place for synchronous learning. And I know that I've had a lot of conversations over the past 18 months about the importance of getting faculty on board and really engaging them with learning technologies. And I think that this is really to the credit of those that took part in the research, that faculty are really happy with this new way of doing things. So if we look particularly at the impact of COVID-19, the first finding is that 84% of respondents who took part in the research between May and July this year said that they want to retain the technology that was implemented during the pandemic. And of the remaining 16%, they're saying they would like to keep aspects of it. Nobody would like to go back to what they had in place before COVID-19. We have another poll that I'd like to pull up just now around asking you if you would like to keep the technology that you had in place during COVID-19 in place going forward. Paul, would you be able to launch that poll for me, please?
Yes, David. Keep the online delivery one.
It's the first one.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
Launch for the audience to.
Thank you very much. So you'll see the question says, do you intend to keep up the use of these online delivery methods after the pandemic? Yes, all of them. Yes, most of them. Yes, less than half of them. No, or don't know.
So we'll just give it a few moments for everyone to answer, and I'll be able to give you the results in a second. Okay, the results are in. So we've got 20% say yes, all of them. We've got 68% say yes, most of them. We've got 12% say yes, but less than half of them. We've got 0% say no and 0% say don't know.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Paul. So yeah, I mean, I think that the findings are very similar to what the sort of overarching research shown. We've gone into a little bit more depth with the question I've just asked you all than what we actually asked the people who took part in the research earlier this year. But you can see that responding business school leaders are really keen to keep aspects of faculty teaching online. So 62%, nearly 2/3 of them would like to keep synchronous learning online. And 65%, are sort of saying, we don't really see the need for students to come to campus as much as they previously did. And this really suggests that there is a preference in the future for hybrid or blended models of learning. And again, this is really interesting because when we asked the question about hybrid or blended learning last year in 2020, the jury was divided, and we're sort of seeing that in the 9 months since we launched the findings of the first piece of research, people are moving towards thinking that, yeah, hybrid and blended is something that we definitely want to put in place in our business schools. And in terms of long-term strategy, 83% of business school leaders say that they believe the pandemic has triggered major changes to their institution's long-term strategy. Just 17% of those that took part in the research think that they're not going to have to make continuing changes due to what's happened over the past 18 months. So we asked business school leaders what ways their business schools had innovated their program delivery in the past year. And you can see here that 91% are increasing the use of digital or online learning opportunities, 78% are conducting lectures using virtual teaching technology, and that moves right down through a spectrum. So various different strategies and innovations and ways of doing things that business schools have put in place. So you can see here that it ranges from flexible timings, collaborating with industry, really looking at lifelong learning using technology. And I'd like to put a similar question to yourselves as well at this stage. So Paul, we have a poll around tech that is currently being used in business schools. Would you be able to pull that up for me, please? So we're really asking what teaching methods does your business school use to teach programs? So live video conferencing systems from PCs, virtual reality and or augmented reality, MOOCs or e-learning, live virtual classrooms from studios, or live online virtual classroom software from PC. So we'll just leave that up for a couple of minutes so that you can fill it in. Okay.
So we've almost had everyone answer, so we'll just give it a few more seconds for the remaining people. Okay, so we've got 70% say live video conferencing systems from PC. We've got 7% say virtual reality. We've got 33% say e-learning or MOOCs. We've got 33% say live virtual classroom from studio. And we have 44% say live online virtual classroom software.
Okay, that's really exciting. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so then I suppose asking survey respondents what really moved them and motivated them to implement technology such as what we've just discussed in their business schools. And you can see that the main reason, unsurprisingly, from just under 9 out of 10 respondents is course continuity during the pandemic. But you can see here that other reasons that are really coming forward are the need to meet prospective student expectations. And I think that connects to the comment that I shared earlier around the workplace. So students are expecting to work in much more digitally enabled workplaces. So therefore they expect that technology to be in place in their business schools. 44% of business schools want to remain ahead of the market. And 43% equally want to keep up with competing business schools. But you can see there that there's options here around new revenue models, new ways of building courses or bringing students forward, and that then connects, of course, to lifelong learning or digital credentialing. And I mean, I think it would be unfair not to mention that there is pressure within the higher education market, and that's having an impact in 29% of those that took part in the research. And that pressure is to, keep up with the Joneses, to keep offering new and innovative ways of doing things. And, I think that fits in with the fair comment that business schools are ahead of the curve in the business arena, and therefore have to be using and implementing the technologies that they discuss that are being used in the wider business world and society. So then asking about investment, this is really asking about, moving forward, how business schools are going to consider their investments and of time, of effort, as well as finance in these technologies. What is really interesting is the MBA program is the program in business schools which is receiving the most funding in terms of digital teaching methods, with 83% of participants to the survey saying that their business school is investing at least a moderate amount of or more in this technology for the coming 18 months. Now, asking about why they want to invest more in these areas, 77% of business school leaders are saying that flexibility in learning is their main sort of motivation to want to offer more technology to enable digital learning for MBAs. Now, I think that again connects really nicely into the rest of the findings. So it's about offering alternative ways of learning. It's about bringing more people into the conversation. It's about enabling students who live remotely or can't travel to campus to be able to take part in the courses. It's about democratizing education. And these ideas are really coming forward quite a lot. And then thinking about the next 2 years, overarchingly, and not just within the MBA program, 67% of survey respondents are saying that flexibility in learning is their top priority for investment across their entire business schools. Other top priorities include soft skills enhancement. Just under 6 out of 10 are saying that's an important priority for them. And 45% are going to look into new ways of investing in technology to enable student engagement metrics. So that fits into the challenge that they're facing around, understanding if students are comprehending what's happening in the course, if they're engaged, if their well-being is strong. So you can see here in which areas has your school invested the most in online learning technologies. So then it sort of takes it down the sort of scale from 77% who are saying that they intend to invest most in flexibility, down through ability to work in team projects, two-way discussions, networking opportunities, soft skills, careers, engagement, and well-being. And I have another poll around this because I'd be just interested to find out if you really agree. So I suppose in terms of learning technology, where do you plan to invest in the coming 18 months? So very similar options to what the respondents to the survey had. So flexibility in learning, student engagement, networking opportunities and collaboration, soft skills enhancement, career services, or student well-being.
Excellent. So we've got the poll open for the audience, and we'll just give it a few more moments for everyone to answer, and then I'll be able to give you the results. Okay, so we've got 72% say flexibility in learning, 48% say student engagement, 36% say networking opportunities, 20% say soft skills enhancement, 4% say career services, and 8% say student wellbeing.
Yeah, it's not far off what the survey showed as well. So thank you very much. And then just another quote from Gunther, the Dean of Tom School of Management in Munich. And again, he's talking about this hybrid setting and, how we're moving on a journey towards a new orthodoxy or a new way of doing things within business education. But it's again, this sort of picks up on the flexibility options. He says that mindsets in business schools need to change to draw on possibilities and flexibilities, but students themselves need to be flexible as this is the new normal. Hybrid extends to other areas. It's not about just hybrid learning, it's about hybrid meetings, physical meetings, and different ways of doing things. Like I mentioned earlier, to be able to engage as many people as possible in various different mediums to make sure that there's a piece of the pie available for everybody, no matter how they're able to access learning or collaboration and networking. And I think that's a really sort of profound quote, and I think that's really important to remember moving forward. Massive 82% of business schools say their school is planning to invest further in technology to enable online teaching. And Terry from Nottingham University Business School talks about why this is an issue at her business school. She's saying, like, before COVID-19, there was no burning platform to move into a situation to replicate courses online. So like I said at the start of the presentation, it was a time when these things were all experimental. We've talked about education technology for years, and, you know, innovations and schools are doing exciting things, but COVID-19 created a burning platform, I suppose, to put a lot of these technologies into real life. And that has absolutely changed the leadership paradigm in terms of the workplace as well as the business school. And Terry really summarizes quite nicely what the research is showing as well. You know, we want to produce graduates who can manage under crisis, who can think expansively, who are challenging what notions of leadership should and are like. And if you're able to operate in a very sort of innovative and digital environment like the workplace, the technology is there to support you to do that. And the technology has provided a platform for schools to offer these environments and these ecosystems whereby students are empowered, I suppose, to think about new ways of thinking and doing and leading and managing. So then, just to summarize the main findings of the research, so 9 months on from when we first carried out research into education technology, business schools have more than adapted. They are thriving using this technology, and that's really exciting to see. And, you know, I think the proof is in the pudding. 84% of those that are putting this technology in place want to keep it. They don't want to return to a pre-COVID status quo. They don't want to go back to the way things were. And certainly in the area of technology, that's really exciting and really promising. And I'm certainly excited to see what, you know, if we were to carry out this research in another 2 years, how far we would come, because I think, you know, the bullet train, as it were, has left the station, and it's moving forward with increasing momentum, and that's really exciting to see. You know, the research is also showing that 2/3 of participants would like to see faculty and students continuing to work online, looking at new modes of hybrid or blended ways of learning. 83%, as I mentioned, are saying that the pandemic has triggered really major changes in their business school and in terms of the long-term strategy. And while the jury was divided at the end of 2020, business schools are now, they're really confident that blended and hybrid models will replace the traditional classroom-based delivery of courses in the coming 5 years. And as I mentioned earlier, an increase of 24 percentage points in terms of the volume of schools using virtual classrooms, 75% in mid-2021 versus 51% in late 2020. Challenges remain. Challenges will always remain in business education, as we all know. So issues around a perceived lack of engagement from students, connection and bandwidth issues, the need for ongoing amends to course materials in order to take them into online environments. But it's flexibility of learning as opposed to concerns around delivery that have moved to the forefront of business school leaders' minds. And I think, you know, it's wiring the electrics of the house and then furnishing on top of that. So they've got the platforms in place that they need and they're confident they're working. It's about how you take that forward and make it accessible and make it available to everybody. And 2/3, 67% of leaders believe this is where business schools have to put their effort and budget moving forward. Overarching findings, there's been no shortage of investment in enhancing and improving learning systems, with the MBA receiving the most funding for digital learning, and more than 3/4 of business school leaders are continuing to invest in online technology to enable flexibility. 8 out of 10 leaders plan to invest yet more in this area between now and 2023. So COVID-19 is still around. That's something that we are learning to live with and work with. I think it's fair to say that, you know, immediate initiatives will still need to circumvent the impact that the virus and potential lockdowns cause. But the exponential change and evolution witnessed at business schools over the past 2 years has addressed these challenges effectively. It's also addressed challenges with which educators have been grappling for years in order to deliver courses, and it's given them that impetus to be able to do it effectively and and future-proof a lot of the I suppose the services and ways of delivery that they were offering. And as the world changes and sort of climate change has a bigger issue, the growth of digital natives, the need for lifelong learning, the growth of consumerism, and I suppose personalization of business education, certainly for MBA or postgraduate students, is becoming more and more and more important and adding more pressure to business school strategy. These technologies that are in place now are enabling business schools to sort of say, right, okay, well, we've got the pieces in place to be able to solve these problems. It's just about being strategic enough to fit the right piece into the right hole of the jigsaw, if that makes sense. And our way of putting that is, now that the mechanics are in place for business schools to use technology effectively, the opportunities are boundless. So I'll hand back to yourself, Simone, and then we can take some questions.
Excellent. So thank you, David, for walking us through the findings. I've really found them very exciting, very insightful, hopefully for you who are assisting here as well. My personal takeaways, David, were really, the first thing is flexibility. That's what we really can see, is that business schools not only want to offer more flexibility, but also have to offer flexibility. You mentioned the pressure on the higher education market or the business school market. You mentioned various things. So needing to give the flexibility. Now, there is a difference from what we hear between education for undergraduates and executive education, for instance, right? And that's also what we can see. So Barco, with our solution, we carry for business schools and also learning and development departments with corporations, right? So where we talk about business education, right? What we can see is, yes, for people who are used now to work from home, to get trained from anywhere, right? Having the possibility to come to campus or to the corporate university or stay at home because of their schedules, their private life, right? Because of vaccination, because of visa issues that has existed before the pandemic, we just don't remember, right? Or because of a tough schedule, right? Where traveling can take a lot of time. This is now taken for granted, right? You go if there's a real necessity. What we also hear from our business school clients is that they are thinking through, when do we really need our students, our participants on campus? And when can we allow them this flexibility, right? I think that's the right thing to do. And honestly, David, 1 year ago, I mean, we were really not there. We were really jumping, and I was myself actually surprised how quickly all these faculty members have been, and teachers, I mean, whatever grade they were teaching, jumping on quick fixes and getting online to just produce continuity. We have, in such a short time, made such a long way. I'm just impressed myself actually with adoption of technology, and whatever technology, because I think nobody, I mean, let's say not nobody, but a big part actually of faculty just did not want to teach online, right? Or sitting in front of the computer for most of them. So yeah, flexibility really being the one thing that for me stands out. Would like to mention here also, as you have seen before on the slide, we do virtual classrooms, but we also do virtual hybrid classrooms with Barco. We connect solution, so which means knowing perfectly what the problems also are with virtual hybrid classrooms, because everybody wants to do it, and not a lot of people or a lot of institutions, and I assure you in the corporations it's exactly the same thing, really are successful. Knowing the ingredients, helping actually institutions to set that up is really important for us. And we do that actually all the time. So just as a little reminder to give back this flexibility or that institutions are looking for. So I would really say that the other big takeaway for me is, yes, institutions seem to have now deployed their technology. Big part of it works. Maybe, as I said, hybrid or high flex, as it is called in the US, still needs some improvements. But what we can see on the other hand side, that I found that very interesting, I don't know if you want to comment on that, David, is that they still plan to invest heavily. So if I can look into our business school customers, they are extremely demanding because they want to build the future. So which means people, you who are now participating to that webinar, you want to lead the way, you are building the future, if it is with virtual reality or with other technology that can open new paths. So I don't know if you want to comment on that as well. So I find that really exciting. This is pushing us, the technology providers, the solution providers, actually to really think forward and look into, okay, what can we offer that enhances, of course, always the learning outcomes, because that's what everybody is looking for. It's not only to be fancy, right, and the best in class, but it's really about the learning outcomes and how can we enhance that.
Yeah, I mean, I'd completely agree with that. I think it's about there's a lot more confidence to experiment, and you know, that's something that's really coming across. You know, I think that even a year ago, when we asked questions around virtual reality or virtual classrooms, schools were reticent to sort of say, well, yeah, that's something that we're definitely going to invest in. And I think it's because they're taking a lot more feedback from students. They're having to proactively ask students for their feedback, because it's not as easy to just, you know, sort of grab someone in a corridor anymore and ask those questions. So I think that's something that's certainly coming across, and I think that fits quite nicely with the investment agenda, that it's just about, you know, they want to be surprising and innovative and ahead of the curve, and they're not frightened to experiment anymore, and that's certainly really exciting. We're going to move on to questions from the audience in a second. I can see that some have come through. But I have another question for you, Simone. I think it would be remiss of us not to talk about challenges and for you to offer some advice. So the research did show that, you know, issues like student engagement are coming up as a major concern for business school leaders. Do you have any recommendations or ideas as an industry expert into how business schools could really work to enhance that engagement or ensure that they're getting what they need from their cohorts?
Yeah, that is the interesting thing, right? I mean, hopping on technology, but the engagement is not there. Or what are we expecting? What engagement are we expecting? That's also the same thing. So, you know, I tend to say, in generally speaking, and then I go into some tips and tricks, I would say. But generally speaking, I really would say that engagement is key for learning outcomes, and what does it make? How can we make it different actually from what we are used to? Is really to be able to see each other, right? I mean, today, again, I'm frustrated. I always say it when we do webinars together, David, because I cannot see the audience, right? And of course, on our beautiful WeConnect platform, I can see everybody and I'm having a lot of fun. So with that, I would also invite people to come to one of our discovery sessions where I can see you and have a chat with you and be very, very engaging. But thanks God, we have had some polls, so which is great. But yeah, so seeing people, being able to have these chats, also the side chats, maybe before a session, after the session, right? And then the other thing is where we are pushing it, and that's also something that we hear a lot with our customers, is where is virtual better than in class? You know, until now we were more looking into, okay, we are replacing actually, because we cannot do in class, we are replacing it by virtual, okay, whatever tools you're using. But looking, if you have the right tools that are engaging, why do you, asking yourselves, why would you do a virtual classroom? And where does it make more sense than coming all together? And there are a couple of use cases, and that of course depends on your strategy. I recently have had a chat and the webinar with Judat Dalson from INSEAD Business School, and he is the CIO of INSEAD Business Schools based in Singapore. And one of the things that he really several times told me was, it's really, really important to align the objectives actually of the IT department, of the deployment of technology, whatever technology it is, to the strategic objectives of the business school. So of course, everybody is on the radar and says, okay, what's the new technologies that is coming out? But on the other hand side, I mean, don't just deploy for deploying, and include all the faculty members. And then the engagement, to come back to your question, David, is coming if the faculty also has adopted the technology and likes it. And I agree, the results of this research are very encouraging, because that seems to be the case, right? So I think there was a lot of wrong paths that were taken, and that this was corrected over very, very quickly. You know, it's like learn, fall down, and step up again, and that's great. You know, honestly, it's great, because when the faculty is then driving that and really wants to do it, also the engagement comes. If the faculty is engaged, the students are engaged. If you have then the right technology in place for the right programs, I think it will become perfect. And then if you double that up with artificial intelligence or virtual reality, well, I mean, where are we going? I mean, I'm dreaming.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Okay, so I'm going to move on to some questions from the audience. Please keep sending your questions in. We'll try and get through as many of them as we can before the end of the session. I can see that a couple of people have asked, will we get a copy of the slides? Will the PowerPoint presentation be available? Absolutely. We'll send you post-event communications in the next few days, which will have a recording of the session, and I'll include my PowerPoint in that as well, so as you can access it. In fact, I think one of my colleagues is on the line today who might be able to put a copy of the actual report into the chat box. So just give us a couple of seconds, and we'll put that into the chat box so as everybody can access the web page on our site where we have the whole report, so you can see all the findings. Okay, so the first question that I can see that's come through is, what data do you have about the shift in personnel in business schools due to the pandemic technology change? I think from my perspective, that's not really one of the questions that we asked in this particular survey. We were more focused on the actual sort of rollout and implementation, but it's a great question. And I think from my perspective, anecdotally, we've had a few roundtables also with Barco around asking the professionals in the technology departments within business schools really how they're doing that. And I think it's quite interesting, because what's coming across to us certainly now is that it's about everybody pulling together to sort of move these agendas forward. So there is, most business schools would have, heads of learning technology or departments that are focused on delivery. But there's a lot of work required of faculty to take their courses into online environments, to put their materials online, to sort of be retrained in order to deliver classes in different ways. I think, I think it's again about sort of, the sort of crisis, and very quickly everybody sort of working towards getting this technology up and in place and deliverable. And now probably I would imagine that the investment that they're discussing would be about recruiting more people to enable rollout and implementation, training, offering different ways of doing things, I suppose. And I think that will probably pan out over the next 18 months to 2 years. It's still quite early doors, isn't it? I don't know if you've got any insight from your own clients.
I would stress what you have said. I mean, I would really underline that, and really seeing that specifically in Europe, I would say. business schools were recruiting heavily. See the same thing, you know, with different roles, if it's instructional designers, if it is learning technologists. The teams are enhanced also in IT, because you need to have IT to support that and to select that, and looking into security, data security and things like that. I mean, they need to serve actually not only their students, but also their clients, if it is about open enrollment programs. So definitely. I think there is one big change also from not personal, but faculty, that I would like to mention. It's, you know, there is a lot of faculty that is traveling the world to do courses, actually in one business school and then in another business school. And this, from what we hear, has been really enhanced, because many of the online MBA programs or online executive education programs can now be taught from wherever, which is a big advantage actually for people, and also not this faculty doesn't need to travel around the world, which is more cost, which is time intensive, etc. So you can get actually the best of the best more easily, I would say. So that's kind of the positive development, I would say, out of the pandemic. One other positive development. I'm an optimistic person. So.
Lovely, thank you very much. We've had another question that's come through. They're saying, I've experienced many angry students who felt cheated by getting online education instead of live. It's difficult to imagine that the satisfaction level will be up to the level that students expect. Hybrid makes a lot of sense, but are we losing our student-centered focus? Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think that certainly from my perspective, in 2020, if a student had booked themselves onto a physical MBA program, and then obviously the pandemic happened and they had to move into an online environment, there's going to be an element of disgruntlement there. And we actually carried out a separate piece of research last year, sort of asking students what their opinions were. And what we found that the vast majority of respondents were saying was, yeah, well, obviously it's not ideal, it's not what we want, but we appreciate that our business schools are doing the best that they can. And I think that, you know, it's a situation that affected the entire world. It was out of everyone's control. And, you know, I think that there's, you know, it's not about, you know, one or the other in a hybrid world. It's about trying to offer the best, I suppose, the best aspects of technology and physical to bring that together. And I think, you know, that I've heard a lot of comments over the past year from business schools concerned that hybrid is the worst of both worlds. But I think, you know, given the investment and the innovation, it is slowly flipping and turning into being the best ways of using technology, the best ways of using networking and face-to-face interaction. I think that, you know, in many ways, technology enables a student-centered approach, because it gives lots of means to provide a personalized, tailored learning solution, for want of a better word. But I haven't seen any sort of feel from any business schools that they're taking their eye off the ball in terms of putting their students first. If anything, that there is a very much a shared sort of sense of, we've got to try and offer the best that we can for our students. And that's what's been coming across to us. And I think, you know, the world is changing, and, you know, I think that the comments coming across that I used as the quotes in the presentation are sort of saying, well, we have to be flexible, but our students need to realize that they too have to be flexible because of the changes that are impacting all of us. I don't know if you have anything to add in that, Simone.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, what we have seen a lot after, let's say, the first wave of the pandemic, you know, the big one that hit us heavily because we just didn't expect it. Now we're getting used to it, right? But there was, I mean, as we said before, continuity of learning, of teaching, with conferencing tools, let's call them out, Zoom, Teams, I mean, that were there and that helped actually to just continue, which was great. I mean, I wouldn't say anything else. We had, and then the new intake came September, October, and people saw that, yes, there were a lot of students signing out, trying to do a sabbatical year, right? It wasn't the right time actually to go traveling maybe, but maybe to do some other things, right? or well, I mean, not understanding why the fees were the same if they went on a Zoom or a Teams program, right? And that's where we were contacted heavily, I have to say, because institutions were looking for solutions that were better than what they could do actually with Zoom and Teams. That was really something that, well, yeah, we said pressure, competition, actually, that you can feel among business schools, certainly, getting up to speed there as well. So we could help quite some institutions there actually to set up their programs, specific programs. I also would like to say here, I mean, what you said, that I have not met one business school or any leader that was not student-centric. Yes, they are really looking into the well-being. It's maybe not the number one, that we didn't see that, right? Also from
no,
your
that's
replies, but it's embedded actually in all the efforts, right? I mean, if they're looking for engagement, if they are looking for also measuring if the engagement and measuring the learning outcomes, which is still quite difficult. What are we doing? We are measuring satisfaction. We are giving marks actually to exams, but understanding really, is the person is sitting at home and is switching off the camera? Is the person now having coffee with a friend, or is she or he following the course? How can I actually make sure that everything is understood, and all the statistics? So with WeConnect, Barco WeConnect, we can set up a lot of statistics, but one thing is really key, is we are always actually doing that in with a good intention for the students, right? To help them succeed in their learnings and in their programs, pass their degrees wherever they are. And we should not forget, and I know, I mean, I when I read the comment here in the chat, I completely understand what you went through, but we should not forget that also there are students that now can join programs internationally that could not join before, right? Because there was no way that somebody could relocate, I don't know, to Paris, to London, to New York, right? Boston, maybe, because it was just not possible financially, or it was not possible from a family perspective, you know, I mean, loads of things. So I think that's really another proof point of how virtual learning, if it's done well, and there is a teacher perspective, a technology perspective. Yes, we were talking about personal there, the courses have to be redesigned. So, and if all of this comes together and works well, I think it's a huge opportunity to be also student-centric in a very diverse way, because you can bring in actually people from everywhere in the world without having to build a new campus, and have a diverse audience. I think that's just terrific. At least that's what we see and hear from our customers that have implemented such solutions and are highly satisfied. So there is a lot of hope for those who still are looking actually for the great. Yeah.
It just so happens I have one more poll left that I'd just like to launch before the end of the session. So I'm just going to put that up now. I think everyone can see that. So it's just really asking, overarching, given that all you've heard during the session today, how successful do you think your business school has been in taking your programs online during COVID-19? So it's pretty straightforward. Very successful, fairly successful, not very successful, not successful at all, or don't know. Can everyone see the poll? Has that launched? Can you see it, Simone?
Yes, it's here.
Okay, so if you just want to answer the question now. I can see that no one's answering the question, which is very unusual.
Oh, and there's somebody saying it doesn't work.
Okay, I'll
that's fine.
There we go. So should we, right, it should be up now. Here we go.
Now it works. Okay.
It's, people have been desperate. I want to answer. Perfect. Okay, so I think most people have answered, and I'll just so yeah, so 24% are saying very successful, 52% fairly successful, 14% not very successful, and 10% don't know. I think that's much better than the findings of the research. I suppose that goes back to what I was saying. It's, you know, we're another, you know, 4 or 5 months on, so I think people are getting perhaps more reflective, again, more innovative, doing new things. I'm just going to reshare my screen and hand back to Simone just now. So just going to
Okay, thank you. So yeah, we've already showed this slide here. So it's really about your learning spaces, your virtual classrooms. You can see here also some examples of hybrid virtual classrooms. If you're interested in knowing more about it, I would really invite you to come to one of our discovery sessions. We do them on a monthly basis, where you can actually, it's not a demo, it's really experiencing what a classroom actually looks like. Okay, thank you. This is really the virtual hybrid setups. On the left side, we have an example from the US Mace Business School at Texas A&M. Sorry. On the right-hand side, we have King's College in Pennsylvania, which is more of an interactive learning space setup. So where we have got huddle spaces where you can actually mix up breakouts between remote students and in-classroom students. So a very, very nice solution where you have to have a very good audio setup, of course, and with AV setup in general. On the bottom right, you see an example from Europe, which is a university, the Leuven University, where they have set up hybrid for quite a long time, a couple of years now. So it's for me, it's a fantastic topic because it has generated, as you say, people say, no, we have tried, it didn't work. We go back, either we do virtual or we do in classroom, because there was no solution. And I can tell you, our customers who have implemented things well are really happy about that. So, and again, coming back to flexibility, and maybe we go to the last slide here. Yes, so you have here the link to where you can register for our discovery sessions. So Discover, We Connect. You will experience, as if you were a student, what it is like to be in a session. How does it feel different from conferencing software, as we mentioned before? I would like to see you. So most of the times I'm animating those sessions because I love to do that. So, and I love to see you, as I said before. And with that, I mean, I really thank you to attend here. I hope that you found the outcomes as exciting as I did, and it's always a pleasure to work with David and AMBA and BGA. We are a partner. We have been a partner for quite a long time and continue next year. With that, I hand it back to David.
Thank you very much, Simone. Well, that is all we've got time for today. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Thank you for your time. Thank you for taking part in the polls and for your great questions. Thank you very much, Simone and Tobacco, for their support with this research and all that you do. As I mentioned, we will be sharing the slides and the presentation with you all within the next week or so, so look out for that. But that is all we've got time for. So thank you very much and goodbye.